up, a Cinema Shogun here, and as you all know, we've been talking a lot about this war over in the Middle East involving Israel. But as that situation continues to spiral out of control, there's still another war raging in the world that everyone seems to have forgotten about. And of course, I'm talking about the war in Ukraine. Now, in the early days leading up to this conflict, I was reporting on the situation daily as the Ukrainians were partying, pretending that they had nothing to worry about, saying that Russia would never invade. I was making videos warning people that Russia was getting ready to invade. As the U.S. government was trying to downplay the situation, saying that there's only a small possibility of an invasion, I was already reporting to you all that Putin was moving troops to the border, getting prepared for a big, full-scale conflict. And of course, that conflict happened. Now, in the opening weeks of that conflict, I was reporting on it every single day, but I stopped for multiple reasons. For one, I'm not really a war channel. I like covering war stories. I like, covering these stories leading up to these conflicts. But I'm also not going to sit here for years on end giving play-by-play what's happening in a war. So that's one of the reasons why I backed off. But the other reason is because there was so much propaganda and misinformation out there. It can be tough when you're just a little YouTuber in your spare bedroom battling the mainstream media, the government, and you name it. So as I was sitting here trying to tell people the truth about what was happening in Ukraine, that Ukraine was losing the war, people would accuse me of being pro-Russia. You're pro-Putin. You're a Putin puppet for telling the truth. Because you see, our government, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, you name it, they were all claiming that Russia was losing the war, Ukraine is doing so great, and all of this stuff. But from the data I was seeing from the ground, I knew that none of that was true. But like I said, I'm just one guy. One guy going up against a huge establishment. So I understand that people look at the news and they hear what the president says. They hear information coming from the Pentagon. Like I said, CNN, Fox News, you name it. And they're all telling one story. And then they turn on my YouTube channel and I'm telling a different story. So of course they choose to believe them instead of me, right? I can't necessarily blame everyone for that. But I think that everyone needs to start waking up to the fact that we're being lied to. Me personally, I don't have an agenda. There's no agenda behind why I report on whatever I report on. And when it comes to a war or an armed conflict, I'm never here to choose sides. I'm here for the truth. And I'm here to try to spread the truth about what's going on the ground. The same thing goes with the situation over in Israel. I've found that if you don't choose a solid side, people get angry. If you say that it's wrong for Israel to bomb civilians in Gaza, you're an anti-Semite. But if you say it's wrong for Hamas to invade Israel and parade around the streets with the dead bodies of women and children, you're considered someone called me it on Twitter the other day, a Islamophobe. So if you speak out against some of the things that Israel is doing, you're an anti-Semite. If you speak out against Hamas and what's going on in Gaza, you're an Islamophobe. There's no in between. There's no winning here. People just get angry. People just want you to pick a side. They want that division. They crave it. They need it. And when you try to stay neutral and you commit to the truth, they hate that. Because the reality is, I think both sides kind of hate the truth because the truth is ugly and the truth hurts. And the reality is there are bad things happening on both sides. But yeah, that's what I found, in the Israel situation. It's much like the situation in Ukraine. If you report the truth, you're pro-Putin with the Ukrainian war. If you report the truth with what's going on between Israel and Gaza, you're either an Islamophobe or you're an anti-Semite. You know what I mean? So it's really sickening having to deal with all of that. And I don't understand why we have lost the sense of being able to understand that someone doesn't have to pick a side in order to get the details of what is going on. You don't want your news sources to be totally biased towards one side, because then they're not going to be 100% truthful. So you could be watching this video and you could think, how dare you not be pro-Israel? Or how dare you not be pro-Palestine? But the reality is, if you are too pro-Israel or you're too pro-Palestine, you're not going to be able to see through the fog of war, and you're not going to be able to tell the 100% truth about what's happening. And when it came to the Ukraine war, it was the same thing. I tried to report the reality, and a lot of people did not like that. And do you want to know what the reality is? The reality is that over 500,000 people have already died. And that's on both sides. So we're looking at around 600,000 deaths from this conflict alone. That's the reality. You want to know what else the reality is? The reality is Ukraine is losing. They've lost over 20% of their land, or roughly around 20% of their land. Ukraine is losing. You want to know what the reality is? The reality is that America has picked up like $3 trillion in debt from this conflict over in Ukraine. And you want to know what the saddest reality of all is? There were going to be peace talks in 2022. Ukraine and Russia were both ready to sit at the table, and America stopped Ukraine from having these peace talks. America told Ukraine, no, you don't need to sit down and work out a peace treaty with Russia. We're going to give you whatever you need. We're going to give you all of the money and weapons you need to continue this fight. And that's what Ukraine did. And they're suffering major losses because of it. Now, don't get me wrong. In the opening days of the conflict, I think that Ukraine was putting up a tougher fight than Putin expected. But then again, I don't think Putin expected America to pump as much money into this conflict as we have, and we're still doing so to this day. But what's really funny is this. After months and months of lying about what's going on in Ukraine, after months and months and months of hyping up this counteroffensive, pretending that Ukraine is winning this war, now that we have another war in Israel that America is interested in, now they're telling the truth about what's going on in Ukraine. Okay? Everything that I was reporting months ago that Ukraine was losing this war, now they're reporting the same thing. It only took them 6 to 8 months to catch up with the truth. And the only reason they're revealing the truth now is because they're ready to wash their hands clean of Ukraine, chalk it up as a loss, and they're ready to go ahead and dive right into what's going on in the Middle East. Now, I know that if you've been paying attention to this conflict, that you've heard that Ukraine is winning. You've seen the Ukrainian flags in people's bios on social media. You've dealt with all of the propaganda, and chances are you didn't even know you were dealing with propaganda. But I want to show you what CNN is now saying. Now that we have another war to be interested in, CNN and all of these mainstream news outlets, they're changing their tune, and now they're finally admitting that Ukraine is not winning this war. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I'm going to go ahead and roll this clip, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
After months of a counteroffensive to wrest territory from Russia, new reporting from Time magazine reveals that while Ukrainian President Zelensky is still deeply committed to the fight, some of his advisors are worried. One of Zelensky's aides telling Time he deludes himself. We're out of options. We're not winning. But try telling him that. And that sobering assessment extends beyond the civilian government. Ukraine's commander-in-chief for the armed forces saying this to The Economist: "Just like in the First World War, we have reached the level of technology that puts us into a stalemate. There will likely be no deep and beautiful breakthrough, a stalemate which was not the characterization over the last several months."
They've already acknowledged that they're not going as fast as they would like. That said, they are moving. It's not a stalemate. They're not just frozen. The Ukrainians are moving.
We do not assess that the conflict is a stalemate. We are seeing it continue to take territory on a methodical, systematic basis.
We've seen good progress in the counteroffensive, which is very heartening. We want to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs not only to succeed in the counteroffensive, but has what it needs for the long term.
And the reality on the battlefield? Well, we can show you. Those silver slivers of yellow are Ukraine's counteroffensive gains, and it really isn't a whole lot. Now, the ground in Ukraine is hardening now for another long winter, and the fight in the United States over how much aid to give it is getting more intense. Congress has authorized roughly $113 billion so far, but polls suggest that the American people's willingness to support Ukraine is waning. The yellow line here shows the share of Americans who say that the U.S. is doing too much to help Ukraine. And now it's at 41%, up from 29% in June. And that's raising some tough questions for the Biden administration and for both parties in Congress.
It's always funny to me watching how the media works. And they sit up there and they act as if they haven't been lying this entire time. They act as if they have not been misrepresenting what was going on in the ground or on the ground in Ukraine for over a year now. But now that we have a new war to fund, now that we have a new war that we're interested in, America's ready to ditch Ukraine and they want to jump headfirst into the Middle East. So it's not like the media just woke up one day and decided, okay, I guess we'll tell the truth about Ukraine now. No. The media, the government, the powers that be, the war machine, if you will, they're all working together. So now, slowly but surely, the media is going to start telling you the truth about Ukraine. Public opinion about Ukraine will shift a little bit. They'll take a lot of the money that they were funneling into Ukraine and they will start funneling it into the Middle East. And mind you, a lot of this money that we're sending to Ukraine, it is not making it to the front lines, okay? All the money that we've sent, you would think that Ukraine would have been doing a tad bit better in this conflict, but the reality is, I can guarantee you a lot of that money is not seeing the ground. A lot of that money is not going to military purposes, okay? But now, like I said, now that we got this new war, you're going to start seeing the media start to tell the truth a little bit. And a lot of these politicians that were all pro-Ukraine, we need to send them money and fight for their peace, they're going to slowly but surely start deciding, hey, maybe we shouldn't send as much money to Ukraine. And they're going to try to paint themselves out to be a hero. Yeah, I stood up and I stopped the funding of the Ukraine war. When in reality, they were all for it until they found a new shiny toy to be interested in. And that shiny toy is the Middle East. Yeah, we dipped our fingers in it before, and now we're going to not double, triple, but we're going to quadruple dip into the Middle East and into their business and what's going on. So over the coming weeks, be prepared for that. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not saying there's going to be a peace treaty or that this war is going to end tomorrow, but we are going into the winter. I think the fighting will die down during the winter, and if Ukraine is smart, they'll try to come to the talking table and work something out, because we already got nearly 1 million people dead, and more are going to die, and Russia has honestly been kind of taking it easy. I've seen some of the military equipment that they're using in Ukraine, and it's not their best equipment. They're not sending their best soldiers either. So who knows what's going to play out there. But it's funny to see that they're finally admitting the truth, and the timing of this is so obvious. It's like, it's just so obvious that y'all are ready to ditch one war to hop into another one. You know, this, y'all couldn't have told the truth about Ukraine before October 7th. You know what I mean? They could have said this in September. They could have said this in June, July, August. No, we're just now going to tell the truth about Ukraine now that there's another war. I mean, it's so blatantly obvious what's going on here. But I just thought I would show you all that to show you what's going on with that conflict as well. Let me know your thoughts, though, down in the comments below. If you're feeling generous, you can support this channel via Super Thanks, or you can support this channel for free by sharing this video, hitting that like button, subscribing, ringing that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next video.